Weather Channel is brought to you by this cable or satellite provider.
Hurricane Andrew devastated South Florida. In the aftermath, it was clear that Andrew was made worse by poor home construction. Wood frame doesn't hold up well in high winds. The best framing materials are concrete blocks or reinforced masonry. The roof should have at least a 35-degree pitch and should be what's called a hip roof with no gable ends to catch the wind. Be sure your builder uses hurricane straps that resist rust. The straps must tie the roof to the walls and the walls to the foundation. Plan doors and windows away from the corners of the house where wind stress is less critical. Demand hurricane-resistant windows or traditional hurricane shutters on all glass surfaces. Now in South Florida, many of these items are required by law. But if you don't live in an area where there are such stringent anti-hurricane codes, insist on these basic elements for your home.
Weather in so little time. That's why we love the web. Weather.com. From the Weather Channel. The weather experts. On TV, on PC.
Good morning, everyone. It's 4:03 in the morning Eastern Time, and I'm Bruce Edwards at the Weather Channel Forecast Center as we continue to track Hurricane Bonnie that has moved on shore and has decided to stick around coastal North Carolina for a while. Here's a look at the satellite picture, and as we crank it up, you can see Bonnie hasn't moved a whole lot since when it made landfall yesterday. You can see, once again, the center just on shore and the entire eastern half of the state of North Carolina encompassed in clouds associated with Bonnie. Now, the latest information from the National Hurricane Center as of the 3 a.m. Eastern Time update, Bonnie was centered at 34.6 degrees north, 77.5 west, or approximately 50 miles southwest of New Bern, North Carolina. Top sustained winds, 100 miles per hour. Again, it hasn't come down all that much over the last several hours. It is continuing to drift very slowly to the north-northeast. Central pressure is now 970 millibars. We take a look at the situation along the sounds and the coastal sections of North Carolina yesterday at Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. Winds from the hurricane whipped up waves at Wrightsville Beach. 3 miles east of Wilmington, trees were blown over, boats were bounced around the dock. State officials estimate that southeastern North Carolina, over 300,000 residents are without power. And as long as Bonnie sits there and swirls and spins about, it's going to be hard getting any power crews in there to restore power. Weather Channel senior forecaster Kevin Roth with us this morning to take a look at the situation with Bonnie. And Bonnie just continues to sit there and spin, and that causes problems getting in and trying to assess what's going on.
Not only getting in and trying to assess what's going on, but it means our rain is going to continue for the next day or day and a half over parts of North Carolina, leading to some serious flooding problems.
That looks like the situation. We want to reiterate again in the watches and warnings that are still posted up around the region, and we do have the hurricane warning still in effect from the Virginia-North Carolina border to Murrells Inlet, and from Smith Point, Virginia to Chickateague, Virginia, the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. That's where we have hurricane watches presently in effect. Now, north and south of those regions, through this morning, we have heavy surf advisories from Cape Henlopen up to Merrimack River, New Hampshire, and then south from Savannah, Georgia to Jupiter Inlet, still some very heavy surf. And of course, the threat has been so far with any landfalling hurricane, the possibility of tornadoes. And have we had, Kevin, any kind of severe reports of any kind of tornadic activity with the system?
We've had several reports of tornadoes as it made landfall during yesterday afternoon, last evening, and this area is primed to get some this morning, as we do have some feeder bands from the system working up into that area.
Well, even outside of tornadoes that may occur with that, just the winds in and of themselves are strong. We're seeing that the winds will be 50 miles an hour or greater over much of eastern North Carolina and extending up into the Norfolk, Virginia area and the Tidewater region and up towards Maryland's eastern shore. We look at the radar estimate of precipitation out of Columbia, South Carolina. We can see some fairly substantial amounts to the tune of, perhaps 6 to 8 inches of rain over eastern parts of North Carolina, expanding to the north.
The heavy rain has continued overnight, and actually some of this, the Doppler in here is estimating the 6 to 8 inches of rain, but we've had some ground truth closer to 10 to 12 inches. So it's underestimating this just a little bit, and this will continue to expand northeastward during the day.
Alrighty, and we look at the radars now. This is the live radar out of Wilmington, North Carolina, and a pretty substantial band of moisture just sweeping around New Bern, between New Bern and Cape Hatteras, and right up into the Sounds.
And that's one of the bands that we're looking at potentially for some of the tornadic activity. This band up in here seems to have weakened up toward Elizabeth City, but that did have a few tornadoes in it earlier as well.
Once again, with just the slow movement of this system, you can get a constant flow off the ocean. That's just feeding moisture, tons after tons of moisture in, and it's not moving any place anytime soon, and that's the major threat right now.
Major threat not only for the rainfall flooding, but also, as you alluded to here, with the flow coming in on all angles here, we're still looking at some serious coastal flooding throughout today and tonight.
So rainfall totals in this region, we're talking, in excess of an inch to several inches of rainfall, and then it gradually expanding as Bonnie drifts to the north-northeast up through the coast into the Tidewater of Virginia. And I guess that's the question on everyone's mind now. What's going to happen with Bonnie and how things are going to be moving?
Over the next 24 hours, it'll slowly meander up northeast here through the eastern part of North Carolina, exiting off the coast around Norfolk probably late this evening or early tomorrow morning. And then from there, Friday and Saturday, it'll accelerate northeastward out away from the coast.
Of course, we've got that stalled front up there in the northeast. Hopefully that would deflect it out into the ocean and get it moving.
It'll help, and we still have some strong westerly winds blowing aloft, but what the stalled front may actually do is some of this moisture overriding that stalled front may spell some heavy rain for parts of southern New England as we head over to the weekend as well.
And of course, that's the litany of problems potentially here. Coastal flooding and heavy rains, ongoing coastal flooding and beach erosion problems, rough surf there, heavy rain, and some brisk winds. So we're talking still the next, couple of days at least before we're really saying adios to Bonnie, it looks like.
And even once Bonnie comes back out into the ocean, the top winds are still going to be around hurricane force or slightly under, so it may be a tropical storm at that point, but it'll still be whipping up those seas and keeping the riptides going all the way up into New England, probably into, if not early next week, at least through the weekend.
Okay, thank you very much. Kevin Ross, our senior forecaster here at the Weather Channel with the insight on Bonnie. We'll continue to give you updates on the half hour from our forecast center, but there's also other weather going on across the nation with all the details and your Thursday forecast. We go back to the studio and Vivian Brown.
Well, thanks very much, Bruce and Kevin, for the latest on Hurricane Bonnie. A look at our radar estimate. Now, this is the Doppler radar, which gives us a running tally of how much precipitation we've seen over the last 24 hours. You can see the heavy amounts of rain in eastern North Carolina from Hurricane Bonnie as it continues to pretty much stall across the coastal Outer Banks. We have been watching some pretty heavy rains here, too, just offshore the New England coast, as we've had as much much as 3 to 4 inches, reports of, mainly over the open waters here east of the Long Island Sound. Another area.
Good morning, everyone. It's 5 a.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. Pacific time. I'm Bruce Edwards in the Weather Channel Forecast Center as we continue to monitor the plodding progress of Hurricane Bonnie, still raking eastern North Carolina with high winds and torrential downpours. It's been a nasty night because Bonnie came on shore near Cape Fear, North Carolina yesterday and decided to stick around and hasn't moved much since. Here's a look at the situation in Wilmington, North Carolina. And you can see again the wrath of Bonnie with the winds whipping the trees overhead. The high winds uprooted some trees, damaged homes in the area. State officials estimate that in southeastern North Carolina, more than 300,000 residents are without power. And with Bonnie still churning there and not moving hardly anywhere at all, it's likely to continue without power for a good long while because the crews will have a tough time getting in there and restoring power. You can see on the satellite picture, Bonnie continues just to swirl right along the coast. Now, the 3 a.m. update of Bonnie has the hurricane center at 34.7 north, 77.5 west, or 50 miles southwest of New Bern, North Carolina. Top sustained wind still strong at 100 miles an hour. The center isn't all that far inland from the ocean, so it's not getting the usual friction and effects and weakening effects that land usually causes on these hurricanes. It's still pretty close to some warm ocean waters. It is just only drifting to the north-northeast ever so slowly. So it's going to stick around, and it's very near the Pamlico and Albemarle Sound areas. So again, that warm water is still very, very close at hand. The Weather Channel's Jeff Morrow has been stationed along the coast of North Carolina at Nags Head, and Jeff's up bright and early with us this morning. What kind of night have you had there in Nags Head, Jeff?
Well, it's been an increasingly windy night here in Nags Head, Bruce. We didn't really have all that much wind yesterday here on the northern Outer Banks. They were getting some wind on down toward Cape Hatteras and definitely toward Ocracoke Island. Very little, hardly anything in the way of any rain. We were just too far away from this slow-moving hurricane. Looks like that's about to change. As you were just mentioning, it's slowly starting to drift to the north-northeast, which is much different than what we saw yesterday. And if that center gets up toward the Albemarle and Pamlico Sounds, as you mentioned, things could be a little bit dicey up here. Those sounds are very shallow, particularly the Pamlico Sound. And with 100-mile-an-hour maximum sustained winds, as you were just mentioning, that's going to push a lot of that water around, and it probably has already. Where that hurricane is centered now, it's going to push all the water to the north and up to the north end of the sound. And the closer that center gets, the more problems we're going to have. No ocean wash here on the eastern shore of the Outer Banks so far. The winds, I would estimate here at about 30, 35 miles an hour. Definitely a little bit stronger than yesterday, maybe a couple gusts to near 40, but we suspect as those rain bands get very, very close, and they're getting close now, we're going to get a lot more wind and unfortunately a lot of rain and maybe some overwash before the morning's over.
Okay, thank you very much. Weather Channel's Jeff Moore reporting live from Nags Head. We'll be checking back with Jeff throughout the morning to sort of watch how things go downhill over the next several hours. Thank you, Jeff. Well, joining us now is senior forecaster Kevin Roth. And Kevin, the National Hurricane Center has just issued the latest advisory on Bonnie, and you have the latest statistics.
Latest advisory, it is located at 34.7 north, 77.5 west. That's 35 miles southwest of New Bern, North Carolina. And we now, instead of a north-northeast drift, it is moving north-northeast at 5 miles per hour. So we started seeing that trend a couple hours ago on the radar, and that's been confirmed by the Hurricane Center now.
And what about the maximum winds? Is it died off any?
The winds are down from 100 down to 85 miles per hour, and we suspect further weakening will continue today as it continues to move across land. The other change is that the hurricane warnings have been dropped south of Little River Inlet. They've been dropped to a tropical storm warning. The hurricane warnings are still in effect from Little River Inlet, North Carolina, up to the North Carolina-Virginia border.
Okay, these are the old ones. So once again, from Little River, from the area here south, just they're dropped, so they're out of the picture here into South Carolina, but they still continue on to North Carolina. And the heavy surf is still going to churn north of that region from Cape Henlopen up to the Merrimack River. Even south of it, it's still going to be an angry ocean, Savannah, Georgia to Jupiter Inlet. And the Storms Prediction Center has reissued the tornado tornado watch for eastern North Carolina, and now including the tidewater of Virginia until 5 o'clock Eastern time. There always is that potential for tornadoes, and of course the winds, even outside the nasty storms, are going to be brisk. We've been looking at some gust up 55, 57 miles an hour during the last hour on the coastal sections of North Carolina. And so again, they've been pretty substantial. The rainfall, again, this gives us a peek at the estimates of rainfall, but perhaps not a true picture of just how heavy the rain has been.
No, the rains in a tropical system are a little finer, and it's harder for the radar to pick it out. We've been multiplying this by a factor of 2 overnight. On this shot here, it shows 6 to 8 inches, but you can probably bet there's somebody in there 12 to 15 inches already.
Here's the latest Doppler radar, and again, you can still see quite clearly the defined center of the hurricane. And boy, that's a strong band of showers and storms, feeder band wrapping up and around it.
And we saw Jeff up in here in Nag's Head, and he is not getting the rain now, but this all is moving toward him, so later on he'll be getting into that rain. And the center is going to drift up through the sounds here today, so it may not lose as much intensity as it normally would once it heads into land.
Yeah, in the next 24 hours, you could see 8 inches of rainfall, but here, this is going to hang around for a while, so some of the estimates could be at upwards of 15 to 20 inches of rainfall on top of what's already fallen. And of course, where's it going to go? How quick is it going to get there? That's the question most folks along the eastern seaboard are asking.
Over the next 24 hours, it's going to slowly move up here off of Virginia Beach, and then from there head out a little more rapidly to the northeast. And that will spare the northeast a direct hit from the hurricane, but this stalled front here, combined with the tropical moisture from Bonnie, will spell some heavy showers and continue that rough surf into the weekend.
So wind, rain, all up and down the mid-Atlantic states into the northeast will be the situation. We'll continue to keep you updated. Thanks very much, Kevin Roth, updating us, our senior forecaster. Now remember, if you step away from your TV and near the computer at work today, check out the latest information on our website at weather.com. And now with the latest on what else is going on across the country on this Thursday, let's check back with the studio and Cheryl Lemke. Cheryl?
And this edition of Weather Center is sponsored by Midas. Now, as we get away from Hurricane Bonnie, there are some other active weather spots around the country. For one thing, we're watching a frontal boundary pressing its way towards the eastern seaboard, and the front continues to cause some locally heavy rains over portions of the northeast. At the same time, another storm system is getting better organized across the nation's midsection, and that one too causing some showers and some storms. So some very wet and some very soggy conditions as you're heading off to work this morning. Well, one especially soggy spot has been portions of the northeast. We are still looking at some locally heavy rain for those of you around Nantucket and around Cape Cod this morning. More rain spreading in across Long Island. And we've had some soakers, too, from just outside of New York City over towards Newark and Wrightstown and Trenton, New Jersey. And it's raining pretty hard, too, around the Philadelphia metro area. So give yourself some extra driving time as you're heading to work or school this morning. Besides that, too, some showers and thunderstorms, too, scattered about from Omaha and Lincoln southward towards Topeka and Kansas City. So again, watching out for some brief heavy downpours and some slippery roadways across the Midwest. Throughout the afternoon, we're watching Bonnie continuing to onslaught the Carolinas. Some stiff winds, very heavy rainfall, and some dangerously high surf. At the same time, though, our system across the Midwest continues to cause some showers and some thunderstorms, so a very messy day for traveling. Now, do expect some locally heavy rains over portions of the Midwest and some extremely heavy soaking rains, too, pounding Virginia and the Carolinas. On top of the heavy rain that has already fallen, we could see at least 6 inches or more of rainfall in some of these areas. And with the clouds and the rain, temperatures held back quite a bit for the Carolinas. Elsewhere, though, very warm, sticky afternoon for the Southwest and the Southern Plains states, but not too bad for the Upper Plains with some 70s. Again, the Northeast will see a mix of clouds and sunshine, and some locally heavy rains will continue to spread their way up across the Mid-Atlantic. And telecommunications for the Weather Channel's live shots are provided in part by Bell South. Of course, we will continue our coverage on Hurricane Bonnie throughout the day right here at the Weather Channel. Stay tuned now for TravelWise.
This program was sponsored by Midas. For quality service, visit your neighborhood Midas today.
Need a muffler? Right now at participating Midas shops, the famous Economizer Plus muffler is just $29.95 for a limited time only. So get into Midas for a great muffler for just $29.95 before it's too late.
Is IAMS good for life? Well, research suggests cats can lower your blood pressure and help their owners live longer, healthier lives. In return, help your cat live a long, healthy life. The wholesome ingredients in IAMS are more digestible, so more nutrition stays in your cat, and cats love the taste. IAMS Cat Foods, good for life, from the IAMS Company. Now, for a limited time, look for specially marked IAMS cat and dog food bonus bags at participating IAMS retailers.
During this edition of Storm Watch, we'll talk about some severe weather beginning to break out right now across parts of the northern plains, especially in South Dakota. But now it's time for a look at our tropical update, and we'd like to update you once again on Hurricane Bonnie. The latest advisory as of 5 o'clock this morning Eastern Daylight Time. The center of circulation just straddling the shoreline right now of North Carolina, 34.7 degrees north, 77.5 degrees west, or about 35 miles to the southwest of New Bern in North Carolina. Top sustained winds, they're down, but still very, very strong, 85 miles per hour. Movement now, it's finally begun to move a little bit now, but still crawling north-northeast at 5 miles per hour. And again, the estimated pressure at about 970 millibars. We do have hurricane warnings currently in effect that go all the way up now to the North Carolina-Virginia border. And you can see we're going to be dropping some of those that were back in South Carolina, with the hurricane now beginning to move slowly but surely on to the northeast and just battering eastern parts of North Carolina at the present time. Until later on this afternoon, we do have this tornado watch, which is in effect now. It covers most of northeastern North Carolina and southeastern Virginia, which does include the Virginia Beach area and Norfolk areas, again until 5 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. It's a long one, and so we'll be looking at those feeder bands coming in from our hurricane, and every once in a while we can get an isolated tornado reported from one of those as those thunderstorms race in from the south and southeast. Let's take a look at the latest radar. And once again, a center of circulation located just about right in through here, so it's not completely inland yet. So we're still looking at some fuel for this hurricane coming in from the ocean at the present time, and the Gulf Stream supplying a lot of moisture. And once again, we're going to be looking at tremendous amounts of rainfall. This is going to be the big story from this point on. Just about anybody over let's say northeastern and east central North Carolina could be looking at anywhere between 10, maybe up to 20 inches of rainfall. Just a bad situation here with a lot of rainfall on the way for the next 24 hours and even beyond. Let's see what's happened so far. Take a look at this. Since 8 o'clock yesterday morning, you can see the Doppler radar estimates of rainfall really beginning to pile up right now over southeastern and east central sections of North Carolina. And once you start getting into some of these reds in through here, now we're talking about some 6, 7, 8 inch amounts of rainfall. And of course, we have at least that much more to go. So easily, some spots are going to be looking at tremendous flooding with up to 20 inches of rainfall on tap. So luckily, another 8 inches or more probably are going to be coming down because of Hurricane Bonnie over eastern North Carolina, southeastern Virginia, moving up the coastline from there a little bit later on during the period. Let's not forget about the Midwest either. You'll be looking at some stormy action. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. Let's talk about Hurricane Danielle, because Danielle is still churning its way west-northwestward at a pretty good clip, 20 miles per hour. 20.8 degrees north, 57.7 degrees west, or 395 miles east-northeast of the northern Leeward Islands, again, top sustained winds 90 miles per hour. It has weakened somewhat overnight down to 993 millibars. But again, it could be making a comeback a little bit later on. Once it gets rid of this shear, we could be looking at a strengthening hurricane all over again. And very briefly, Hurricane Howard, not bothering anybody right now, moving well off the Mexican coastline and moving westward, west-northwestward now at 7 miles per hour. Later today, if you live in the upper Midwest, do beware of some stormy weather here. Going to be looking at a tropical pressure moving eastbound. Should be bringing some nasty weather to Minneapolis, St. Paul later on this afternoon.
Hurricane Bonnie steers a slow course as it dumps heavy rain on the Carolina coast. Will the Northeast feel its impact? Find out on Weather Center after your local forecast.
We gotta go! Get the screen on! The screen's stuck! Hey! You stay away from here! Lori! Stuck! Bella! Bella! Bella!
Only Pella Windows offers the built-in roll screen, so you'll never have to hassle with your screens again. Pella, viewed to be the best.
Call 1-800-64-PELLA for more information.
Oh, no. This is not good.
Get a hold of yourself, man. I'll go get help. People, we need a pilot! A pilot! Get in the room!
Excuse me, miss. I'm Ron Shaw, president of Pilot Penn. Try this pilot, Dr. Grip.
That was close.
To reduce